Hey everybody, welcome to the Tabletop Empire and our 1,000 subscriber special. Thank you so much to everybody who's become a subscriber. I thought it'd be fun to maybe do a Ask Me Anything video, so I asked you guys on Twitter, Instagram, and Discord to ask me some questions. If you didn't get to ask me one this time, go follow me on my socials. I'll have a link to all three of those things down below. But yeah, without further ado, let's just get started. So question one comes from The Real Seth, and he says, I hope it's okay I ask a few. What moment made you fall in love with Fantasy Flight Games' Star Wars RPG? Honestly, I don't know if there was like a specific moment where I fell in love with this system. I think just because D&D 5e was the only system I had tried before this one. And then this one just being Star Wars, I was automatically sold, and then the more I played it, the more I've grown to love it. What kind of Force user would I most likely be? I mean, if it was like a one-to-one conversion from me here to me in Star Wars, I'd probably say Mystic, just because of their attachment to the Force, and me being, faith being a very central part of my life. I think that just kind of makes sense. Question number 3 is, who are my top 3 Star Wars characters and why, if I want to have time, which sure. It's Anakin, Obi-Wan, and Ahsoka. So I grew up with the prequels and the original trilogy, but I always really loved Anakin and Obi-Wan, even from a young age. Ahsoka, because the Clone Wars and seeing her growth or whatever, and she's just an amazing, awesome character, and I really love her character development and her story arc. And what is my favorite non-gaming activity to do? I would have to say music. I've been playing electric guitar, I guess acoustic guitar too, since I was 6 years old. This year is actually my 20th year of playing. Hoping my wife lets me buy a new guitar. But I also do play drums and piano as well. Tranium asks, will I be covering Genesis and its surprisingly many differences, and will I be covering some of the insane amount of fan-made content for both games? Yes and yes, just I don't know when. I'm still personally very new to Genesis, and so I want to have a little bit more experience with the system before I make content on it. And I feel like maybe down the road we'll get to fan-made content. I kind of want to be able to cover all of the existing content first, if that makes sense. But yes, it's definitely something I would love to do. Thesp asks, what other tabletop RPGs am I interested in right now? Are there any games on your want-to-play/run list? Honestly, like, I'm not huge into other tabletop RPG systems. There's not a whole other ones that I've really played. I've played D&D 5e, Star Wars RPG, and one that I'm a player character in right now called Dungeon World. Not really a huge fan of Dungeon World personally, but I mean it's fun, and it's fun enough, and I like the people I'm playing it with. I'm really interested in getting more into Genesis, as I've said before, and then Call of Cthulhu seems like a cool one to get into. Or maybe there's a superhero one that I heard about that I'd be really down to try at some point. Caleb Wilson asks, how and when did you get into Star Wars, and what's my favorite moment in Star Wars? I got into Star Wars when I was 5 years old with The Phantom Menace, and then I remember sitting on the couch watching Attack of the Clones when it came out on DVD with my dad, and then growing up with the original trilogy, and then when I was about 10 is when I watched Revenge of the Sith. My favorite moment in all of Star Wars is definitely the Mustafar duel / that interaction with you are my brother Anakin. It hits me in the feels every time. And then Sultan56 asks, how often do I get to play? Last Sunday? Was it last week? Yeah, a week ago from the day that I'm filming this was actually my first game playing it since last July. For those of you who are maybe new, I just moved down to Florida last May to be closer to family since me and my wife had a baby. So I had a group that would play every other week up in Virginia, but I didn't have friends really down here yet, and so it took me almost a year to really find friends that would maybe be interested and to finally get everybody roped together to play. First session went really, really fun. We all are married and have kids, so finding time to play is really hard. I think our next session is in like a month from now, so I might see about starting a second group so I can play a little bit more often. Okay, we have one question from Instagram. It is Mina Datme. I'm sorry if I pronounced that wrong. It says, what lore do you prefer to run games in, or just in general, canon or legends? I actually don't know hardly anything about legends. Most of my knowledge comes from obsessively watching the shows and the movies, so definitely canon. Though when I play Star Wars RPG, I say everything is canon up to the start of the campaign, and then everything afterwards is malleable. So like, let's say the campaign starts right after A New Hope. Eventually, like, if the players won and were able to somehow pull it off, they could go kill the Emperor the next day. Okay, and then we have a couple from Discord. Xdrinder says, what is your favorite Star Wars movie? Revenge of the Sith is my favorite movie of all time, of any movie ever. I love that movie. Though I will concede that Empire Strikes Back is the better movie, just Revenge of the Sith is my favorite. The Surdic, I think I'm saying that right. What was the silliest character you ever had in a story? I'd probably say there was this NPC duo, and they were on Naboo, and they were guarding this like elevator to kind of get to the city from the forests down below at the bottom of the cliffside. And one guy was just, you know, the dude who's just so over his job, and the other dude, whose name was Bill. Yes, a very Star Warsy name, Bill. And Bill was way too into his job, so you can kind of see how those two would clash together personality-wise. It was really funny. It had me and the party members laughing our butts off, and it was great. And then the players murdered him in cold blood. Poor Bill. Platinum asks, what's the coolest moment I've ever had in a game? I would have to say it was about a year ago. I was playing with my group in Virginia, and there was one character in my party who was part of the Jedi Order, and you know, the whole party went through Order 66, and this character was really struggling with the light side and slowly kind of falling towards the dark. And then I have another character who left the Jedi Order like a couple years prior to follow a Sith teacher, and then ended up leaving that Sith teacher and kind of going back towards the light. So these players went into a Jedi temple, and they kind of, all the characters in the party had a Force vision. One guy had his own Force vision. My wife, who was playing a player character, had her own Force vision. But then these two other characters had a Force vision that was kind of together, where she saw a dark version of herself and he saw a light version of himself, and they were kind of having this cool conversation, gripping with the things that they were struggling with. And then after the end of the conversation, the veil falls, and it turns out that they were talking to each other the whole time. So the players were kind of in on it, like they figured out what was happening, but they kept it a really cool story moment. I think I put more details in an Instagram story, so go check out my Instagram and find it there. T Mantones asks, how do I feel about the sequel trilogy? What sequel trilogy? I don't know what you're talking about. Now, in all seriousness, if you guys like the sequel trilogy, that's perfectly fine. Personally, I despise them. I pretend they don't exist. I think they undermine the original trilogy, the prequel trilogy, a lot of really lazy writing decisions, and ultimately a lot of it comes down to the Rise of Skywalker. But like Force Awakens and Last Jedi were always just kind of okay, and I was kind of waiting to see how the trilogy would end before I really give it any final judgments. And then Rise of Skywalker, it was actually my second time watching through. I just kind of realized that I don't like it. I feel like it's really disrespectful to the Star Wars established movies already there, and I think that the fact that they didn't have a plan going into it only makes it worse. So that's my opinion, and you're free to have your own. Barbarossa41 asks, what is your favorite Clone Wars arc apart from the Siege of Mandalore? Man, it's the Siege of Mandalore. Okay, I gotta choose a different one? Oh man, honestly, the Fives arc. The Fives arc, where he finds out about the inhibitor chip, is straight fire. I love it. And then our last and final question is from Dupe Castagna. I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing that or butchering that. It says, which of the three games do you prefer? I'm assuming you mean the three core rulebooks. And then favorite Star Wars animation series / live action. Okay, so I'll start with the second part of that question. Favorite animated series is the Clone Wars. That shouldn't really be a surprise. The 2007 onwards one. I like the original one from the early 2000s, but obviously I like the 3D one more, whatever. Okay, and favorite live action is Andor. I think Andor is up there for like top 3 things ever made for Star Wars. Maybe top 5. But it is hands down the best thing that Disney's put out, Star Wars related. I think it's even better than Rogue One. So, and then which of the 3 games do I prefer? I'd say in order, I prefer Edge of the Empire first. I have an easier time telling stories in that setting. Force and Destiny would be second, though after running a full Jedi campaign, I'm not sure I'll ever do a full Jedi campaign again unless it's like a pre-made one-shot. And then the one I probably have the least amount of time in that I don't really prefer is the Age of Rebellion. I've never really been a huge Rebels versus the Empire kind of guy. So, yeah. I mean, all 3 books are great. That's just kind of where I would place them. Yeah, and that is all of our questions. Thank you guys again to everybody for the 1,000 subscribers. It really just blows me away. This is something I've been working towards for 3 years of doing YouTube stuff now, and I guess now about 7 months of this channel. Yeah, I'm just going to continue climbing, continue grinding, Next goal is to I want to hit 5,000 by the end of the year. So I need you guys to share this channel with your friends and help make that happen. I already hit 1,000 way sooner than I was expecting, but you guys are awesome. Thank you so much. I look forward to getting to continue to make content. I love doing it, and I should have the Mandalorian video out. I'll get it done when I get it done. It's a lot. It's a lot of work. So I can't wait for you guys to see it though. I'll see you guys then. But until then, and as always, may the Force be with you. See ya.